That afternoon, the sky looked as if it were dusted with a thin layer of ash. A cold wind threaded through the bare branches. The first rains of the season tapped and slapped against the pavement in front of the security gate of the Pentagon East Annex. Colonel Marcus Reed, a 46-year-old black man who had led relief operations on the other side of the world, had just finished an urgent briefing about the National Air Defense System. He was not in uniform, just khaki pants, a dark jacket, and an old baseball cap. He looked so ordinary that no one would have guessed he was one of the Air Force's top strategic experts. In his hand was a leather briefcase containing a classified report on a radar defense vulnerability. He only wanted to leave quickly and drive to the field where his son was waiting. But as he reached for the handle of the black SUV, a voice barked from behind. "Sir, step away from the vehicle." Marcus turned. Two patrol officers approached. Sergeant Cole Danner, a large man with a flushed face and a suspicious gaze, and Officer Ryan Hale, younger, visibly tense, as if waiting for a chance to prove himself. "Excuse me," Marcus frowned. "Hands where I can see them," Danner shouted, his hand moving toward his sidearm. Marcus raised both hands slowly, his voice still calm. "Officer, there must be some mistake. Do not move. We got a report of a black male tampering with cars in this area." The rain intensified. They forced him against the cold metal of the car, twisted his hands behind his back, and the metal clasps of the handcuffs clicked shut. In the empty parking lot, the United States Air Force colonel who had once defended America's skies was treated like a criminal on the very ground he had sworn to protect. Marcus said nothing. He only stared straight into the gray, rainy distance. The light faded, and in the sheets of rain, people saw only a black man in handcuffs, unaware that, only hours earlier, he had walked out of a top-secret national security briefing. His name was Marcus Reed, Colonel, United States Air Force, 46 years old, a man who had devoted his life to discipline, to his country, and to the principles he believed would uphold justice. Marcus was born on the south side of Chicago, where sirens and gunshots had once been the soundtrack of his childhood. His father worked as a mechanic, hands always stained with oil. His mother worked night shifts as a nurse and had taught him, "When people do not see you the way you are, make them see you by the way you act." He carried that saying with him for the rest of his life. As the only black cadet in his class at the Air Force Academy, he graduated at the top of his class with honors. He had commanded international relief missions and helped coordinate operations on radar defense networks. Medals covered one wall of his office. For Marcus, they were not a source of pride but a reminder of responsibility. Still, he knew there were uniforms that could not hide everything. When he took off the uniform and left base, he was once again just an ordinary black man. No rank, no insignia, nobody knew who he was, and sometimes, the world treated a man like him differently. That afternoon, Marcus had left a meeting with the Defense Committee about radar data security. The meeting was not yet finished, but he had asked to leave early because his son Malik had his first game at the high school season. He did not want to miss it. No escort, no military badge displayed, only a father hurrying to the field, carrying a briefcase, thinking about his 15-year-old son's smile. And perhaps it was that ordinary appearance that made him the ideal suspect in the eyes of two men who saw only skin color and not the person. The rain came down harder. Rain ran down his cheeks and mixed with the cold sweat on his skin. His wrists were cuffed behind him. Marcus's breaths came slow and steady as if he were measuring the space around him. "Officers, I am Colonel Marcus Reed, United States Air Force," he said, his voice low and steady, without tremor. "Please, check my identification. It is in my jacket pocket." Sergeant Danner squinted and sneered. "Yeah, people like you always have a story ready." His tone was full of contempt, as if every word Marcus spoke were an excuse. Marcus did not argue. He looked Danner in the eye with a calmness that bordered on cold. Then, very subtly, he tilted his left wrist so his military watch barely brushed his right wrist, an almost invisible touch. In the palm of his hand, he felt 3 faint pulses. The security locator had been activated and a signal was sent directly to the Air Force Coordination Center. He knew the protocol within 10 minutes, but confirming message would be established. No one at the center would ignore that signal. Marcus inhaled deeply, then said slowly, "You have 10 minutes to verify who I am." His voice was even, neither loud nor soft, but it carried a weight that made the air pause. Officer Hale hesitated, his gaze flicking between Marcus and Danner. "Sarge, maybe we should check." "Shut up, rookie, do not let him play you." Marcus closed his eyes and took a long breath. He understood if he showed anger, they would call it resistance. If he fought back, they would say he was dangerous. If he stayed silent, at least he would keep some control over how he was seen. He had endured survival training in the desert, the stress, the pressure, the life or death decisions. But he had never felt as heavy as he did now, facing not an enemy, but people who should have been protecting the same flag. Marcus opened his eyes. His expression was no longer angry. It was a deep, abiding sadness. 10 minutes, he repeated, as soft as wind. After that, you will understand what you have done. The rain grew heavier. Thunder rumbled somewhere in the distance, flickering across the dark sky above the federal parking lot. Time seemed to slow, each raindrop hitting the car roof blending with the harsh sound of 2 policemen breathing. Danner still stood close to Marcus, his hand gripping the gun handle. "Where is your registration, huh?" "Inside the car," Marcus answered evenly. "Yeah, convenient," Danner growled, always the same excuse. Ryan Hale glanced at his watch, lips pressed tight. Something felt wrong. This man did not look like any criminal he had ever seen. No begging, no fear, only a terrifying calm. Then came the echo of boots striking wet concrete. 3 figures in black suits stepped out from the far end of the lot, followed by 2 armed military police officers. Danner spun around. "What the hell?" The man in front pulled out a badge, his voice cold. "Special Agent Rivera, Department of Defense, step away from the detainee. Now." The air turned thick. Ryan Hale immediately released his grip and stepped back, his face pale. Danner froze, struggling to keep his tone steady. "What is this about?" Agent Rivera stepped forward, eyes sharp as a blade. "About you handcuffing the sitting Air Force colonel, on federal property." The words fell like a verdict. Danner stammered, He said he was." Marcus turned his wrists, the metal scraping against his skin until it bled. "Colonel Marcus Reed," he said quietly, the ID he refused to check. Rivera signaled his team. One officer unlocked the cuffs, another collected the radios, body cameras, and every device the 2 officers had touched. "Document everything," Marcus said, his voice steady. "Their radios, the cuffs, timestamps, I want it all logged." Rivera nodded and gave the order. The scene unfolded in silence, broken only by the sound of rain and Danner's unsteady breathing. Hale lowered his head, his voice trembling. "Sir, I did not know." Marcus looked at him, eyes cold yet filled with sorrow. "You did not want to know." The words sliced through the air like a thin blade. No one replied, only the rain kept falling on the concrete, heavy, dark, as if trying to wash away a layer of prejudice just exposed to the light. 24 hours later, the meeting room at the city police department was silent. A large screen replayed the body camera footage. Marcus Reed, hands cuffed, standing still, never saying a single harsh word. And Danner, shouting, pushing, dripping with contempt. The footage needed no commentary, it spoke for itself. The investigative report was sent directly to the Department of Defense. Findings: no resistance, no threat, only discrimination. Sergeant Cole Danner was suspended immediately. A few days later, he resigned. Officer Ryan Hale, young, unsure, and caught between right and wrong, was asked to lead the force voluntarily. There was no press conference, no official statement, only a heavy silence hanging over the police headquarters. News spread faster than the storm that night. Television channels and major newspapers all mentioned the man who stayed calm when power failed him. A man who did not shout, did not sue, did not retaliate, who stayed silent, yet whose silence made an entire system look at itself. When interviewed, Marcus simply said, "I did not want revenge. I wanted reflection." A few days later, during an internal Air Force ceremony, he was asked to say a few words. No long speech, just one line, steady and deep, echoing through the hall. A uniform commands respect, but dignity must exist even when the uniform is gone. The room was silent. No one clapped immediately, but in the eyes of hundreds of soldiers shimmered the same emotion, pride and sorrow. 2 months after the incident, a new memorandum was issued by the Federal Police Training Bureau. The title was simple: New Federal Protocol, Identification Before Force. In the appendix, a small note read, Case Reference, Incident No. 47 AF, Subject, Colonel Marcus Reed. From that case, a series of reforms began. All patrol officers must verify identification before drawing their weapons. A new training program on implicit bias recognition was introduced. And in that course, the video of Marcus's incident became official teaching material. But Marcus Reed did not appear on talk shows, did not go on television. He did not accept exclusive interviews or seek justice for himself. He returned to base quietly and continued his daily duties, where everyone still addressed him properly, Colonel. On his left wrist, the marks from the handcuffs had not faded. He did not bandage them, did not cover them. He kept them as a reminder that even those in uniform could become victims of prejudice if the world refuses to look closely enough. One Sunday afternoon, Marcus was invited to speak at the military academy for new cadets. Among the rows of uniforms, a young cadet stood up and asked, "Sir, were you afraid that night?" Marcus smiled, his eyes distant. "Yes, but not for me. I was afraid that if I reacted, they would say I proved them right." The room was silent. No one said another word. But in that moment, everyone understood true strength does not lie in the weapon or the rank, but in how one holds on to dignity amid injustice. Later that evening, Marcus drove back to the same parking lot. The rain was gone, only the glow of sunset stretched across the damp concrete. He parked in the exact spot where he had been handcuffed. Quietly, he took out his phone and snapped a photo. In that image, there was no person, only space and light. He saved the photo and wrote a single caption. "They saw a suspect. I knew I was a soldier." That image would later be shared millions of times. Not out of anger, but because it reminded people that dignity is something no one can ever chain. If you hold power, look deeper. If you wear a badge, listen harder. Because the next Marcus might not have time to send a signal, and might never get the chance to prove that they belong here.